In this video, I'm going to show some new art assets that have been finalized. So it's 3 in total, and they're mostly obstacles that show up randomly in the level for the player to avoid, and they're train related. So first I'll show the wireframe, and I'll show you how the collision meshes are composed for the objects. So for the traffic light over here, it's just a simple rectangle, and again it's a collision brush like I showed in the other video. Now here is where I said I guess in the second object, which is a railroad crossing, that collision mesh has to be broken up into 2 components, because as I said in the other video, the collision brushes have to be convex. So here I show the first part, which is for the rail crossings, and then for the post it's a separate. And I guess a good definition of convex is that if I have for example a sword, it can only hit the object once and go out of the object once, so there's only 2 intersections, and that will be the case if I break up the object into 2. If the object was completely made up of these 2 pieces, then it fails to be convex, because if I put a sword through it, it'll first hit the green rectangle, go out, and then hit the post collision geometry, and that doesn't work in my engine, so it needs to be broken up into 2 components like I have here. So if I move it, see, it's 2 components. And the same thing for the clock tower. Again, it's broken up into 2 different components for the collision. So I test these individually when I'm doing a collision check. So again, it's very simple geometry for the collision, as you can see, and then more complicated geometry for actually what's visible in the world. So that way I can do really easy tests that are performed very quickly. And now I'll show the actual texture for these objects in Maya. So first we'll get rid of these meshes, or the collision meshes, get them out of the way. And of course I export each of these separately with the plugin, and then get it into the level editor, which I'll show next. But first we'll look at the textures. Yeah, there we go. And again, as you can see, certain back parts are missing like I showed in the other video. So we can cut down on the size of the model a little bit. Not too much in this one, but every little bit helps. So again, I just place these randomly in the level, and they show up, and then the player has to look out for them and avoid them when they appear. I'll show that in the game and the level editor when it's running, and that's what I'll show in the next section of this video, these objects and how they're placed in the level editor. So here are the objects in the level editor after I've exported them from Maya. So as you can see, I put them at the side, and the player can avoid them as he's jumping from track to track. And again, you can see the back where I've taken out certain, or at least the artist has taken out certain triangles to cut down on the size of the mesh, since all you see is the front. So there's the rail crossing, the traffic light, and further up ahead is the clock tower. So next I'll show these up and running in the game, so you can see the character doing a little bit of interaction with these new obstacles. Alright, here we have the new assets that I showed earlier in the engine. As you can see, we're coming up on the rail crossing, the traffic light, and the clock. So like I showed in the editor, I just added a couple of instances so you can see it in the engine. And In the final game, of course, the level won't be as busy. I'm just adding this to test the engine and do a little bit of load testing. But everything is in, including the collision meshes that I showed earlier in Maya. And it's just nice to have these objects to add a little variety. So I'll show some collision. There I just showed the collision detection working. And as you can see the mesh that's stationary. So that pretty much wraps up what I have to show for this video, and I'll just keep adding updates as I catch up with all the assets that I have. So that's it for now. Thanks and bye.